Henderson Library's Home Edition. My name is Miss Nicole, and today we're going to be making mummies. Okay, so in each of your kits, you should have 5 strips of linen, 1 doll, this printout with our mummy's organs, and these jars, and these other symbols, and then lastly, this bigger piece of paper, which has this and as well as sort of an alphabet translation, but we'll do this part last. Okay, so before we begin, we're going to kind of do a little bit of history so we kind of have some context for what we are doing. So during ancient Egyptian times, the Egyptians believed that when they died, they continued to live in the afterlife. But in order to do so, they believed that they needed to preserve their physical bodies to be used later. So how they would go about doing that is through the mummification process, which we're going to be kind of mimicking with these supplies. So not everyone was mummified because it was a really expensive process. Typically, it was only people like the pharaoh or other nobility or officials. Common people could be mummified, but only if they had enough money to pay for it. Okay, so to get started, there were 7 main steps in this entire process. So for our first step, first they took the body and they would wash and purify it. So for this part, we're going to take our doll and we're going to take her out of her package. And this is one of my favorite parts. We're going to take a pair of scissors. See her ponytail here? We get to cut that right off. Hair to the side. And then next we also want to take off her shoes and her dress. Okay, now the body is washed. Okay, so what they would do first in the process is they first would remove the body's brains. And they did this because they believed that the brain really didn't have a purpose, so they thought they just wanted to get rid of them so they didn't have to like mess with that in a different, or at a different time. So how they would remove their brain is they would take a really sharp stick, they would put it into the body's nose, and basically just like wiggle it around until the brains became kind of soupy and would just come out. It's really gross, I know, but it's also, I don't know, kind of cool. They would kind of perform an like autopsy on their doll to remove certain organs. The reason that they did this is they believed that these organs needed to be preserved so they could use them later on. So how they would preserve them, the main ones that they focused on are on your sheet here. So they would preserve the intestines, lungs, liver, and the stomach. And each one of these corresponded with one of these different jars, which were called canopic jars. And these were just sort of like vessels that they would use in order to keep these organs safe. So, for example, the intestines were matched with the jar with the falcon head. The lungs matched the one with the baboon head, which is this one. The stomach was with the jackal head over here. And the liver was with the human head, which is this one. So what we can do is we can cut these out. We can pretend to take the organs out of our doll. So here is the intestines, and then we can correspond them with each jar. So there's that one. We can take her lungs and put them with the right one. And then this is the liver with the human head. And then the stomach with the jackal head. The reason that they took out these organs and not like, I'd say a main organ that we think of like the heart, is because the Egyptians believed that the heart was connected to their soul. And they didn't want to remove the soul from the body because they thought that would be bad for when they were trying to cross over to the afterlife. Okay, so now that we have all the organs out, what they would do next is, so since the body has all these cuts in them, they didn't believe in like sewing the body back up. What they would do instead is they had this symbol, which was called the Ujjat eye. And this was kind of used, and it was either placed or drawn over top of the cuts, and they believed that when the final process was done, this would help heal the body afterwards. So we'll just kind of leave that there. So for step 3 and step 4, what they would do is, now that the body is emptied of its organs, they would now want to preserve the body itself. How they would do this is they would fill the body and cover it with salt. And then they would leave it to rest for 40 days so it would be like fully dried out. So let's pretend like we've already done that and it's been after 40 days. So now, after we have removed all of the salt from inside of the body and outside, next would come the actual wrapping of the mummy with our linen. So they would first stuff the body with linen, so it could kind of keep its shape, and then they would take linen strips and then wrap them around the rest of the body. So now that our mummy is wrapped, what they would do now is they would place the body into a sarcophagus. They would do this as kind of like, it's like similar to the Canopic Jars. They would use the sarcophagus in order to have the body protected, just in general, so it could kind of like go through what they saw as the process to enter the afterlife. Part of that is next we're going to cut out this mask. These were called death masks, and they were placed on top of the mummies before they were in the sarcophagus. And these are just more kind of decorated, and it was kind of helped to distinguish like who the mummy was and also to protect its facial features as well, because they thought that was important. You can leave it plain or you can decorate it. I'm just going to use like highlighters. And then you can make it neat and you can just lay that right on top. And then after this, the mummy was officially ready to be buried into a tomb. So we can just treat this as the sarcophagus and put it inside. And then the last thing on our sheet that we should have is this kind of smaller looking mummy in a sarcophagus. These were also, so this is what our sarcophagus would look like. However, they also had charms that they would bury with the bodies as well. So we can like cut this out and like leave it just like anywhere in the tomb or like even on the outside. And then we're all set. Okay, so now that our mummy is done, now I can get to the very last thing that's in our kits. So during this time period, mummies were buried with all of their belongings because they thought that they would need those in the afterlife. One thing that they would do, that they did have with them, were these things called cartouches. These were more kind of just like plaques where they would have names, and these would sometimes be placed on the outside of the sarcophagus, or even just like on some of their belongings to kind of say like, hey, this is mine. So if you want, you can either write your own name using our alphabet or make up a name for your mummy. So for our alphabet over here, so this is a very rough translation of hieroglyphics to our English alphabet. It's not a perfect translation because the hieroglyphics stood for either sounds or ideas. So what we have here is not our complete alphabet because they were just some sounds that they didn't have. So for example, like I'll show you how I'm going to write my name. I'll just write my name. So my name is Nicole, so I'm going to start with the N, which is this symbol. Okay, so there's N, and they would write top to bottom. Okay, so next I'm looking for an I. So there is no I. Oh wait, there's an I, sorry. So next I'm going to find the I. Now I'm going to do, mine aren't very pretty drawings, but we're going to try. Okay, so next I'm looking for a C, but as we see, there is no C. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to look for the letter that we do have that makes the closest sound to that letter in my name. So I'm just going to use a K instead. Okay, and then we're looking for an L. Perfect. Okay, and there's no E, so that's just going to be my name for Nicole. And yes, you're all done. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out more videos on our home edition page, and don't forget about our summer reading challenge. Thank you.